Folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about I guess it's an international debate about refugees and the so-called refugee crisis, mass migration, illegal migration, people smuggling, and look at all that and look at the standard or the quality of any international debate. And there are various discussion forums or debates and so on that are held around the world in different places. And there's one recently in Doha, for example. And this is driven and controlled very tightly by the World Economic Forum and the globalist cabal. They can tightly stage manage these events, so that, say, out of six invited speakers, one may be just a moderate opposing mass migration or has some views about which refugees should come to the West and which not, and so on. And then there's 5 speakers or contributors who are super pro mass migration and super pro refugees, and who take the base position that these alleged refugees should not need to prove they're refugees. They should just be able to front up to any rich white country they want and be instantly admitted, and borders are evil and racist and so on. So that's their position. And again, the one moderate speaker who would oppose it. Even the moderate speakers who oppose the mass migration and the mass refugee thing, even they're treated as if they're Hitler. And the moderators are not moderators. They're there to castigate, embarrass, humiliate, talk over the top of, interrupt, and otherwise harass the moderate speaker who's opposed to open-ended mass migration, whereas all others are soft questioned, if questioned at all. The audience questions, if there is an audience, there are hand-picked members. All the questions and all the assertions that are made are super pro-refugee, super pro-mass migration. For a lot of young people talking with American accents, by the way, brown and black people talking with American accents, how do they get invited to this? So it's very stage managed. The questions are pre-scripted. Nobody comes out with questions that well organized and that well written that are so tightly on globalist message. I mean, it just doesn't happen in the real world. So it's a very controlled and stage managed event. But I'll just go through some of the, and I've done a cross section. So I looked at a number of these sort of, debates probably isn't quite right, but given how stage managed and pro-globalist it is. But I'll go through some of the main points here. Now, I watched several of them, and I had to make some notes given the spread of videos that I had to look at to do this. Now, I'm going through my notes here, and I'll have to sort of go back and forth a little bit, so bear with me if you would. The entire structure of the thing is vehemently anti-white Western. If a black country or a non-white country doesn't want to accept refugees, not a mention. Nothing wrong with them. If they want to do that, that's their right. But if a white country wants to refuse refugees or mass migration, or even wants to be selective about it, such as, do you speak the language, do you have skills, that sort of stuff, then straight away they go straight to, and we have to remember what the Nazis did to the Jews. Straight away it goes to that. So if you don't take in, if you even question any alleged refugees or anything like that, you don't take them in, you're a fucking fascist Nazi, you damn Holocaust murdering fucking Nazi, and they go straight to that. And if they're even pulled up and I was only saying there's similarities. I didn't mean it was the same exactly. And they say, no, fuck off. So now I'm looking at one of the mediators here. Now she's an Arabic woman who has been educated in England, and I think she, from looking at the information, at least she did senior high school and university in England, and then worked there for some time for an Arabic news outlet. That's about as best I can. It's the Wikipedia and all that stuff on it was pretty thin. But now she's been in England for at least most of her. I would think most of her senior teenage years. She's got quite a number of English mannerisms, the head tossing and the way that she it makes a point and so on. It's a very English girly, and upper class English girly. This is not working class English girly at all. This is sort of moving up, to the higher end of the middle class. So she's not someone who's been doing it tough. She's quite photogenic, and was later a news anchor, and she's wearing designer label expensive clothes, so she's not poor. But she's vehemently anti-Western. Now, whether she's just paid to do that or that's a genuine thing, I don't know. But she was pretending to be a mediator. She's nothing of the sort. She was a fucking rabid activist and was soft questioning all the pro globalization people and the one sort of moderate person who questioned some of the refugee type thing, who's a white guy. She was quite brutal to him, did everything she could, interrupt, falsely accuse him. You seem to be saying the same thing as Hitler said. Yeah. And but interviewing a woman who believes that if women are in charge of everything, the world will be a wonderful place. Then when the questioning came to her sort of utterances, instead of going after it with equal vigor and vehemence that she did on the the anti-globalization speaker, or not even anti, just questions a lot of its central themes. But when she was talking to someone who says women should be in charge of everything and no country should have borders, then instead of questioning the absurd impracticalities of what the woman was talking about, another Arabic woman, as it turns out, instead of that, she goes straight away, with Trump and his wall, children in cages, little children in cages, Trump on the wall, fascism, Hitler. And straight away they go to that again without even debating the merits of the actual issues. It's just anyone who opposes it is fucking Hitler. All right, that's it. We don't need to talk about it anymore. So again, it wasn't a debate. It was just a bit of fucking globalist propaganda. So all this. And now, if we look at the speakers, here's one sort of debate, or if you call it a debate. Now, all the speakers in favour of the globalisation thing, mass migration, mass refugees, no borders. So all the speakers that are in favour of that. They're all NGO stooges. They're all affirmative action. They've all come out of the affirmative action machine, and with an eerily similar sort of thing that they're discovered in senior high school or early college that they're going to be useful to getting the globalist message out to the sort of people the globalists want to get it out to, and particularly turning social division, like turning the blacks, like the black people are suffering terribly in America due to globalization, but somehow the activists are on board with it, that it's actually a good thing. And any black problems are caused by the white people and slavery from hundreds of years ago, not by the globalist policies of today. It's a masterclass in deception to actually look through that. But you look at that, so NGO stooges, this is one panel I'm looking at here, black homosexual, Arabic lesbian, and there was only one guy who was questioning mass migration and the refugee stuff, and he was the only one who was there on merit. All the rest were through the affirmative action machine. All of them had been gifted their degrees, gifted their president of the student council, editor of the student magazine. This very, very similar path. So it's a very set path where they artificially build a CV for these people so that they appear credible Well, look at this person here. They were president of the student union, editor of the student magazine, published author. I mean, holy shit! This person is an expert. We have to listen to them. But they actually achieved none of those things. All of those things were set up and created for them to give them this veneer of legitimacy when they go out and spread the globalist propaganda. Now, one sort of speaker was saying things like, well, being a refugee or kept in a refugee camp is immoral because children, little girls in particular, children in these refugee camps don't get as high a quality education as they would if they went to live in a first world country. So just consider this for a minute. No one asked this question, which is insane. These people they come from a rural area of a very poor country, and they move into a refugee camp. Now, the children have never been to school anyway. At best, given how they live out in the middle of nowhere, at best they're going to get 2 years of school, and that's it. Now, the speaker says, well, these people from these third world dirt poor countries where they would never get an education anyway, these people are entitled to a first world education. And every minute of every day that they spend in a refugee camp with a much higher standard of education they would ever have had where they came from, for every minute of the day they're in this refugee camp getting a mid-level education, for every minute, then these children, the little girls in particular, little girls dressed in pink probably, are not being able to realise their full potential. They can't realise their full potential. The only way they can realise their full potential is if they go to a first world country and be given a free education by the white taxpayers. That's the only way they're going to realise their full potential. And if anyone stops them from doing that, girls from realising they're not only misogynists, but they're fucking Nazis as well. And that's the simple truth of it. Now, these people are able to say these sorts of things and get applauded. And no one pushes back. No one asks the questions. No one says, hey, hold on a minute. What sort of education would they have got? So they're in a refugee camp getting much better education than they ever would have received where they came from. Why are they being oppressed? Why are you arguing this oppressed thing? Again, there's a lot. You could shoot down all of these arguments they put up, but nobody does. These things just allowed to go straight through. The assertion becomes the fact, becomes the reality. It's insane. Now, this same speaker argues that in order for third world children to reach their potential, the West must grant all asylum requests, and whether people arrive legally or not or whatever, it doesn't matter. But the all asylum requests must be legal so little girls can reach their full potential. I mean, holy fuck. What sort of argument's that? Why isn't she arguing for the countries where these people come from to upgrade their education systems and giving it? Why aren't the black countries denying these little girls their full potential? Why is it the white countries that are somehow denying it? I mean, it's insane. The logic is utterly insane. But this is what gets talked about in these things. And again, it's allowed to go straight through unquestioned and unchallenged. Now, so some other things that came up is a lot of the third world borders, national borders, are not necessarily based on ethnicity. And if you look at some of the sort of the tribal regions of Africa, some of them are quite tiny, 10 miles across or something like that. So you could have had this patchwork of tiny states, that couldn't survive as a nation state or anything like that. Or you put a number of tribes in one nation state, and assuming they've got commonality of language and things like that. So some of the claims here is that the third world borders are not all based on ethnicity the same way as, say, England is based on the English, or French on the France on the French, and Germany on the Germans, that sort of thing. Hungary on the Hungarians. So they're saying, given that not all the third world countries are ethnicity based in terms of borders, then that in itself delegitimizes all borders. And again, the massive leap of logic is insane here. So therefore, no borders should be allowed anywhere, because there's some African countries and Middle East or whatever that don't have tight ethnicities because they are very tribal societies rather than they hadn't made the jump to having a national identity or anything like that. Stayed tribal for thousands of years. Now other arguments were, well, the white West has most of the world's wealth and therefore most of the power and technology to set international trade agreements, to have influential foreign policy. Therefore, any and all refugees anywhere in the world are all the fault of the Western countries. So there were some spurious arguments put forward to that, saying, well, the reason Mexico is poor and why Mexicans want to go to the US is because of US trade policy. It has nothing to do with the corruption of the Mexican government. It had nothing to do that the Western. There's a tiny Mexican elite, the whole sort of 3/4 of the nation's wealth. That's not it. There's nothing to do with Mexico and Mexico's governments and how they administer their country. Nothing to do with the drug cartels. Nothing to do with it. It's all the white West. Every bit of it is the white West. Nothing. No responsibility needs to be held by the Mexicans and the Mexican government. It is all white people and the white countries. So again, a massive leap here. And these assertions were made. Therefore, all refugees are the West's fault. Therefore, the West must take all refugees. Again, massive leaps and assertions. But they're confident that the media won't examine what they're saying and castigate them. They know this in advance. So these people can talk as if they were, middle high school students in the debating team, chasing virtue points. So they don't have to be factual. They don't have to be accurate. They don't have to put forward cogent, coherent arguments. They can just make these insane assertions and then just go right on going. No one will question it. Now the West, it's argued the West must take in all the refugees. Well, this is not a point of debate. And any attempt to base migration or refugees on skills, or can they speak the language and so on, that is racist, it's fascist, it's Nazi. It can't be allowed. The West must take it. But what about China? Or no. It only applies to the white West, not to the others. Well, what about these people go to another Arabic country or another African country in the refugee camps? No, because the quality of life in a refugee camp isn't as high as it would be if they went to a first world country and were given lots of welfare. Well, yeah, Jesus, and you're just shaking your head at the madness and the insanity that is, as if there's no reality in any way, just doesn't exist. It's only their fevered imaginations that are the reality. The 1930s Nazi period, of course, is in vogue. And by the way, no one talks about the Jewish refugees were not all of them, but on or about half of a little bit less than half, but on or about half of the Jewish diaspora from Germany were denied refugee status, or immigrant status for that matter, in other countries. Now, as I've done in other videos, there are a few reasons there. Firstly, the Jewish diaspora only wanted to go to the rich white countries. So they had a very tight group of countries they wanted to go to. They could have gone to many other countries that weren't wealthy. Poor countries or lower middle band countries, but they didn't want to go there. They didn't want to go to the rich countries, and so that was part of the problem. The second thing is the Great Depression was on. Now, places like America and Britain and so on, they had unemployment rates of 20 to 25%, even higher in some years. So they shut down all immigration. Didn't matter whether you're Jewish or not. They shut down all immigration. Only the most skilled of the skilled were getting immigrated. And if you look at say a country like America with 130 million people, whatever it was at the time, they were only letting in less than 50,000 immigrants a year, and so these were people who had the people who had the triple PhDs other first world countries. Those people were getting immigration visas, but no one else. So the immigration was shut down for everybody, Gentiles, Jews, everybody. And so this idea that it was uniquely directed at Jewish people is utter nonsense. And because of the Great Depression, the massive unemployment, there was hardly any migration going on, and that was the primary issue, not any anti-Semitism as is now alleged in order to push the refugee thing. So citizenship must no longer be relevant. The idea of being a citizen of a country or anything like that's outdated. That's so yesterday. It has to be reimagined, the activists claim. But it's okay for everyone else to be a citizen. So if you're from Sudan, then you can say, well, I'm a Sudanese citizen seeking asylum. So then it's okay to be a citizen there. When you're going from and to, that's okay. You can be a citizen there. But if citizenship is used as a basis for preventing or questioning your legitimacy to come into the White West, then the White West has no legitimacy. As citizenship must mean nothing in the White West, but it can mean something in the country you come from. So this absurd mental gymnastics, again, no one questioned it. It was just asserted, and out it went. And the guy who said it, the homosexual black guy, was even applauded, for goodness sakes. So now, and if you deny any refugee, of course, you're a Nazi. Now, another speaker was saying, well, the process for determining who gets to be a refugee or a migrant, for that matter, going into the West, the White West, is in itself white supremacy. The very process is white supremacy. And when the guy said that, what's he talking about? White supremacy. So his argument goes like this, and again, these are the mental gymnastics. That some of the criteria for determining migration, and he was sort of mixing up and flipping back and forth between refugee and migration. Some of the approved migration, legal migration, refugee, seemed to jump around a bit and adjust his argument to suit whichever end of the telescope he wanted to come from. But his claim goes like this, that if a criteria for accepting an immigrant or refugee or anyone is that they speak the local language of the white country. Remember, they only want to go to rich white countries, so that kind of narrows it there. But if one of the criteria is that they speak, for example, English to go to England, then that is white supremacy, because English is a white language. And if they want someone to speak English or have at least a decent command of it, and it's a white language and then that must be white supremacy. Well, what else could it be? It's a white country and a white language. It's not a black language. But wait a minute, the person wants to go to the white country where that's the language spoken. Doesn't matter. That's white supremacy, motherfucker Nazi. So, okay, let's have a look at that. If the person has, if they're part of the migration exercise determining if someone has skills that are usable or useful in a white economy, or any economy, such as they're, I don't know, an electrician or something, or a doctor or whatever, then that's a white skill. This is now designated as a white skill for a white economy. Bingo, white supremacy again. Holy shit, white supremacy is everywhere here. And the guy just went through anything that may be, whether it be skills, language, or if you're a Christian, or if you're going to assimilate, or if you come from a city, if you've been urbanized, or these sorts of all things that are or can be. That I don't think they're applied very rigorously, not on the migrants I see around here in Australia anyway. That these things are white languages, white economic structures, and so on. Therefore, it's white supremacy, and all that has to go. All that has to go. If someone speaks the local language, who cares? If someone has usable skills or capabilities or education, who cares? They should be allowed in. And if you use any criteria to measure their suitability, then you're a fucking white supremacist, fucking Nazi. And again, no pushback on this. And the guy even gets applauded again. Now, he goes on to say, well, and any who oppose open borders must be evil, power-hungry, white fascist, white supremacists. I mean, it's insane. Again, no pushback, no questioning. Now, part of the problem, this guy says, is in white countries, there are too many white journalists. And if we can change all the journalists to be black and brown, then the conversation will change to say that all refugees should be able to come at any time for any reason. But as long as we have white journalists, we might have a situation in white countries where white perspectives may exist. White perspectives are Nazi, fascist, racist, white supremacists. And we have to get rid of those, the white perspectives, and then some sort of equality is going to somehow come out of it. He's rather vague on it, but again, lots of applause. Yeah, let's get rid of those white people in the white countries. But what about we get rid of brown people in brown countries? No, you fucking racist. So, and again, it's an indication of just how tightly controlled and stage managed it was. Now, other speakers talked about eradicating the white power structure, but in white countries. All right, then why don't we eradicate the black power structure in black countries? No, you damn fascist, Nazi, racist. We have to only eradicate it in white countries, which rather tells you where the globalists are going with this, given again how tightly stage managed it was, and how much this message was being pushed. We have to eradicate white power structures in white countries, but only white countries. Only white power structures must be eradicated, which again, it tells you where the globalists are going with this. Now, a refugee from, what claimed to be, I don't know, a refugee from or a former refugee from a refugee camp who's now living, I think, in Britain from the looks of it. She was talking about how terrible the refugee camps were. Now, this is someone who's lived in a tribal village in a rural area, again, where school is an intermittent thing, where they don't have any, if they do have any electricity, it's from a generator, and they don't have the running water, and they don't have the sewerage, and they, there are very few facilities there. But so her family, so she claims, went to a refugee camp, and it was terrible. Would you choose to go to a refugee camp? She says, and this is to illustrate just how hard done by they were, going from some rural peasant subsistence existence into a refugee camp where they're being fed every day, free medical and dental, and latrines available, water available, and a whole infrastructure that was far more advanced than anything that she would have known in her hometown or home village. But in order to sort of throw it into the middle class thing, which is what they do, they've got this sort of assertion that everybody in the world should live a first world Western middle class lifestyle, and if they don't, they're oppressed. That's the position they come from. So she says that the refugee, who would want to go to a refugee camp? Do you know something? They don't have high speed internet to every tent. They don't have high speed internet. Can you imagine the suffering? Can you imagine how we suffered as a result of that? We'd actually never seen the internet before we got to a refugee camp, but they didn't have high-speed internet. Do you know something? In downtown London, they've got high-speed internet, so why can't we have it in a refugee camp in the middle of fucking nowhere? That's because the Nazis stopped it. And again, you're sort of looking at it thinking, holy fuck, how are these people given any sort of a platform? They're so stupid and so moronic and so filled with insane propaganda that they can't separate reality from any fantasy that goes through their heads. So she's saying electricity wasn't at every tent. There were communal sort of centres and halls around that had electricity and a high-speed internet, but it wasn't to the tent. And why weren't they given nice brick houses to live in? Why were they given tents and these things? No, so they've gone to a place where they're safe, and where they're having a much higher standard of living wherever they came from. And then And then they're complaining, and I think it's a pretend complaint, but they're complaining about not having a first world big city lifestyle out in the middle, in a refugee camp in the middle of nowhere. Now, they never had a first world lifestyle to begin with. So the idea that seems because we don't have a first world lifestyle, then we're somehow oppressed and hard done by. Therefore, the Western white world, and only the Western white world, must take us as refugees and give us that first world lifestyle. And if the white countries don't do that, then they're all fucking Nazis. So it's an insane sort of thing. So now, yeah, some of the things, like people were talking about, I've come from Sudan or wherever, and I love my country. And this is viewed as quite acceptable. You love your country. But if white people say they love their country and want to protect that or their culture, then they're all Nazis. But wait a minute. The guy from Sudan said he loved his country. Doesn't that make him a Nazi? No. It's only white people can be Nazis, you silly moron. So these sort of inconsistencies were just littered. Any sort of decent scrutiny of these people, you could just tear them to pieces, but it was just never done. It was just all allowed to go through. Now, whether there was the issue, or what's the Western view on mass migration or refugees, even though the refugees, masses of refugees have been taken in all over the Western world. In spite of that, they go to, well, the Western view of migration is Trump's wall, children in cages, little children in cages, Trump's wall, Nazis, and they just go straight to that. Now, they don't say, well, the West is or in this case, the United States, they wanted to build a wall to stop the illegals arriving. But that's not said. Whoever wants to go to the US is virtuous, virtuousness on steroids. Whoever wants to question it or stop it is fucking Hitler. And they just have that paradigm. That's it. We don't need to talk about it, discuss. That's how it is. And so they just talk around those fixed points rather than actually debating any issues. So another speaker said, well, the reason people want to move from the poor countries to the rich countries is because, and you see this a lot, it's encouraged very much by the United Nations agitators, this attitude, is that the West is stealing trillions upon trillions from these poor countries that, by the way, have not a nickel or a dime to be stolen, but the West is stealing from all these poor countries, and that's why these people are entitled to move to the West, to take back. It's only their money. They're only going to the West to get to take their money back, so they're entitled to it. And any Western person that wants to do it is a fucking Nazi. Stop it as a Nazi. So, and again, the discussion didn't really sort of deviate from those sorts of talking points and attitudes. And there was one speaker, a moderate, who tried to get, so what about all the corruption in the African countries, and what about all the theft and the constant petty civil wars and these sorts of things? The local warlords and the whether it be religious riots or anything else. What about that? Why don't they make their countries better? No. You even mention that, then again you're being racist. Talking about black countries or non-white countries negatively, that makes you a racist, Nazi, fascist, Hitler. So they won't even talk about those sorts of things. The real, genuine issues that are undermining the African economies. So I just wanted to give you that overview there of these sort of things. It's an insane bit of nonsense, but there you go. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.